Nash County Public Schools went on a soft lockdown today due to a social media threat. I'm live in Rocky Mount with how the events unfolded.
A disaster a decade ago is forcing Duke Energy to clean up its coal ash pits. We're taking you to the top of a landfill where that's happening in Person County and where the energy company wants to transition from coal to natural gas.
And a local teenager takes on the town of Wake Forest and wins. How honeybees took center stage in this David and Goliath story.
We're tracking a cold front set to drop in on us and cool off our warm weather. When to expect the shift and what our weekend will feel like.
Right now at 7, breaking news, a district-wide lockdown for all Nash County public schools has been lifted. In the last 45 minutes, officials say a social media threat that prompted a soft lockdown at 28 schools and increased law enforcement on campuses came from a fake account. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ashley Rowe.
And I'm Dan Haggerty. State investigators got involved in this case. WRAL's Willie Danley is live in Nash County tonight. What a day, Willie. We do know classes will be back on going. Things will be normal tomorrow.
Yes, Dan, it's back to business as usual for schools here in Nash County. And that must feel like a sigh of relief after all of the elementary, middle, and high schools in this area were on that soft lockdown due to that social media threat. Today, the North Carolina Bureau of Investigations concluded that the social media account that threat came from was fake, but they are going to continue to follow up on leads as they come in. Some background on what happened here today. This morning, the school district received a social media threat, and as a precaution, they went into a soft lockdown at all schools. A soft lockdown is a proactive response to a potential threat while law enforcement works to figure out if there's actually any danger. Today, there was an increased police presence at all Nash County schools and the surrounding areas to make sure that students and staff were safe. The Rocky Mount Police Department and Nash County Sheriff's Office were both involved in this operation. All of the schools will be operating on a normal schedule tomorrow. We're still working to find out what exactly that threat to Nash County Public Schools was, and in the meantime, local law enforcement are going to continue to monitor the situation. In Nash County, Willie Danley, WRAL News.
All right, Willie, thanks for the report.
Right now in the WRAL Live Center, I'm Mark Boyle with some new information from the Wake County Sheriff's Office. Sky 5 was over the scene. This was in Clayton. Investigators are now confirming to us here that they were trying to stop a man on a motorcycle for speeding through a nearby school zone. And then when investigators say he tried to get away, they had to follow him into this neighborhood. This is right off of Cameron Street. We had some calls about this. He was able to get off that motorcycle after crashing and really get away for about a minute or two, but it wasn't long. Deputies caught up to the suspect a short time later. He is now in custody. That information just confirmed from the Wake County Sheriff's Office, who is now leading this investigation. This ended up happening in this neighborhood. That scene has now cleared. Back to you.
All right, Mark, thank you. New at 7, police have arrested a man accused of shooting a boy at a Raleigh apartment complex today. Sky 5 flew over the scene on Otters Run Court. This is close to the intersection of Atlantic Avenue and Spring Forest Road. The victim is expected to survive. Police say this man, 30-year-old Traveris Calhoun, is charged with assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious injury. It's unclear whether the two knew each other. A high-speed chase through 4 counties came to a dramatic end in Zebulon. William Williams now faces a list of charges. It all started in Edgecombe County, where officials say Williams was speeding at 115 miles per hour through a construction zone. The chase went through Nash County, ending on Highway 264 near Lizard Lick Road. Deputies ultimately used a pit maneuver to stop Williams.
We can say it's back to business as usual now at UNC Rex hospitals. This after a computer outage altered services for several hours last night. The hospital says an unforeseen issue happened during routine maintenance last night. That's all the details we could get. Though today, the CEO of UNC Health says they are working to pinpoint the exact cause and are confident it's not due to malicious activity. Some systems were out for 3 hours, with most back online by 10:30 last night. Ambulances were diverted from UNC Health to other hospitals because of this, but the hospital was unable to give us the exact count on exactly how many. The managing director of Reliance Forensics says part of keeping data secure is upgrading systems, and that doesn't always go smoothly.
Unplanned things happen where things don't work exactly like you thought they might, and maybe there's a delay. And it sounds like that's probably what occurred here, as opposed to some sort of data breach.
UNC Health says they were able to bring in some extra staff, shift hospital resources, and rely on paper, good old-fashioned pen and paper, to work through the outage.
Tonight, we are giving you a behind-the-scenes look at this massive environmental cleanup. It's all part of Duke Energy's plan to stop using coal to produce our power. This is the company's coal-burning Roxborough plant in Person County. Duke Energy wants to replace it with not one, but 2 new natural gas power plants. WRAL's Matt Tallhelm asked the utility company why this transition is happening now and who will pay for it.
This is what that dusty coal ash looks like. It's what's left behind after it's burned off to create power for us at the plant behind me here. It's all brought over to this landfill. We're standing on top of that landfill 140 feet above the ground and above that coal-fired power plant Duke Energy wants to close.
Layers of sooty-looking soil create a moon-like surface on this basin. Coal ash from Duke Energy's Roxborough power plant was discarded here for decades.
That was the best practice decades ago when these plants were built. We now have safer practices.
Those safer practices are in place now after this disaster a decade ago. Tons of coal ash from a different Duke Energy plant spilled into the Dan River. The company's now required to clean up and close its basins. 2 million tons of coal ash have been excavated from the Roxborough basins and dumped into this double-lined landfill. There are 15 million tons more to go, plus the ash that continues to pile up from the coal-fired power plant.
But it does produce waste, and we are in the middle of a clean energy transition.
That transition is why Duke Energy wants to shut down this plant and replace it with 2 natural gas-fueled plants. The utility says North Carolina will require 8 times more power at peak demand than the company's own projections just 2 years ago. I asked spokesman Bill Norton about that.
Why was that projection so off?
That's a good question. This is a challenge that every utility around the nation is facing.
That challenge comes from rapid growth. The new plants would power companies that have announced in the last few years they're expanding here, including Wolfspeed's new semiconductor chip factory and VinFast's electric vehicle factory, both in Chatham County.
These are energy-intensive industries that are always on. So we need power sources that are always on and always available.
Both new natural gas plants could be generating electricity for the grid by 2030. The coal-burning plant here would close 3 years after that switch is flipped to natural gas. Matt Tallhelm, WRAL News, Person County.
You know, the Environmental Defense Fund says Duke Energy's new plan will saddle customers with, quote, risky investments in new polluting power plants that failed to deliver a clean energy future.
The president will not tolerate attacks on American troops, and neither will I. And we will respond when we choose, where we choose, and how we choose.
3 American soldiers killed in the Middle East in a drone strike. The culprit, a militia group backed by Iran. Following this deadly attack, WRAL reached out to all 16 of North Carolina's members of Congress to ask them how they think the U.S. needs to respond. State government reporter Will Doran is here with their answers. And before we get into that, Will, let's talk about the president and what he has said or done up to this point.
So President Biden has said earlier this week that he has decided how he's going to respond to this attack. Now, he was intentionally vague with the details on what that's going to mean. And, you know, that's understandable. We don't exactly want to tell our enemies when or where we might be striking. However, that's also left some people feeling a little frustrated with the lack of details.
When you reached out to our representatives, how aggressive did they want to be? Were people talking about dropping bombs? What type of action did they want to see happen?
So I've heard back from most of our congressional delegation now, both Republicans and Democrats, and all of them so far have said that they want to see some sort of response. 2 of them, Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican, Representative Wiley Nickel, a Democrat, have said in addition to a potential military response, they also want to see Iran itself hit with diplomatic and economic sanctions.
So one of the things that makes this so complicated is that it wasn't necessarily an attack from Iran. It was an Iraqi militant group that is supported in ways by Iran. Talk about that aspect of this.
Yeah, so that makes things very complicated. The whole situation is very complicated. But one thing that President Biden has been clear on is that he is not going to be starting a war with Iran over this. And so far, I've not heard any members of our congressional delegation disagree with that and say that we should be declaring war. The one who's come the closest is Senator Ted Budd. The Republican suggested that we might assassinate an Iranian general or another leader, similar to a strike that Donald Trump had ordered when he was president against a top Iranian general.
A very complicated issue. Will, thank you so much for breaking it down for us. Also, for all of the responses to the questions we had for our members of Congress, you can go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. Will, thanks.
Still ahead, a local teenager takes on the town of Wake Forest and wins. How honeybees take center stage coming up next. Plus, how America is using hip-hop diplomacy to improve relationships with countries around the world, and how a UNC professor is behind it all. Kat?
And happy February. We're off to a pretty mild start with a high of 59 today. I'll have a closer look at how our temperatures stand so far this winter coming up.
This Friday, an event in Chapel Hill marks 10 years of an international diplomacy program funded by the U.S. State Department. I know that sounds kind of boring, but if you listen closer, you'll hear something special. This isn't a ballroom full of stuffy politicians in suits. No, the main presenters at this event, well, they speak for themselves. On the mic, a Senegalese rapper. On the floor, a Chilean breakdancer, a Nigerian graffiti artist, and more. Everyone rehearsing for Friday's event at Carolina Performing Arts. They're celebrating 10 years of hip-hop diplomacy. Yes, hip-hop diplomacy. A UNC music professor created the program, which he calls Next Level. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Is this blazer-wearing, vanilla-style news lady really about to talk about hip-hop? I know, not what you expected, right? But that's what this is all about. It's taking something you think you know, like hip-hop, international affairs, or a news story, and turning the tables. Speaking of which, this is video from Next Level's trip to Ethiopia in 2020. Hip-hop artists from all over the world, including 5 from the U.S., came together to collaborate in music and work with local communities. It's called hip-hop diplomacy because music grounds the conversation. The rhythm of it all gives way to tougher topics like war, conflict transformation, and entrepreneurship. Here's how the founder of the program describes it.
So in fact, hip-hop just to put it bluntly, has a stronger or better approval rating than the US government does. So people know that it's American, and it's a way to connect with us in a way that's more positive and constructive than, say, arguing about foreign policy.
Since starting Next Level, Mark Katz has engaged dozens of artists from the U.S. and around the world and brought hip-hop diplomacy to more than 50 countries, all of which have strategic importance to the U.S. State Department. Azerbaijan, Indonesia, Nigeria, Taiwan, Bolivia, Honduras, Morocco, Nepal, Peru, Uganda, Egypt, Bangladesh. The list goes on. There's a reason they choose hip-hop. The genre spans 99 languages and dialects. More than 96,000 of the most listened to musicians worldwide are rap and hip-hop artists. Mark Katz says the State Department has spent several $1 million on this so far. You know, using art and culture to strengthen ties around the world really isn't new. The idea actually dates back to the 1930s and was a tool used to fight the Cold War. Louis Armstrong was America's jazz ambassador. He traveled all over the world representing the U.S. government. Time magazine wrote an article, How the U.S. Used Jazz as a Cold War Secret Weapon. Cultural diplomacy was codified when Congress passed the Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948. More than 70 years later, cultural diplomacy has taken on a number of forms. And thanks to UNC music professor Mark Katz,
I do it and do it well. Shout out WRAL.
That includes hip-hop.
It's really important to connect with young people around the world because they're the next leaders. They're the next generation of leaders. So to develop good relationships with the young people in a country and to have them think warmly and positively about the U.S., is really helpful for the future because it means having future allies and future friends.
I want to go back to the rapper I showed you at the beginning of all of this. She's actually a product of the program. Her name is Tusa Sena Rap. She's an impressive rapper from Senegal. She's had a few tours of hip-hop diplomacy, and I asked her what she thinks about using hip-hop as a tool for improving international relations.
I meet Russian people. We talk about a lot about Russia. I meet a lady from India. We talk a lot about India, and like these are those things you cannot learn like at school. You know, and it's a really amazing program, and I feel grateful.
It's awesome. And Tusa tells me that because of Next Level, she really has a meaningful, positive relationship with the United States that she really wouldn't have had before this program.
It really is simple when you boil it down, too, because art and music just transcends culture, transcends all of the borders and the different political views that people have.
And it allows people to connect. So they've got this celebration happening tomorrow night up in Chapel Hill.
Wow, interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Very cool. For most of the past year, a family in the town of Wake Forest has been engaged in a honeybee controversy. Okay, Frank Bowman and his daughter Kennedy, they began this small beekeeping operation on the property there. Last year, the Bowmans' double bee apiary farm drew the town's attention. Town officials say they had some concerns, including stream protection, land clearing, all of this done without proper permits. Then Frank Bowman was faced with a stop work order, which they worked out with the town today.
We don't want this to define the town of Wake Forest, and we definitely don't want it to define Kennedy's honeybees.
So today, town leaders and Frank Bowman finalized this agreement, which says their notice of violation has been rescinded, and I guess they're back to work. The bees are too. Meteorologist Kat Campbell joining us now as we take a look at Fenton. So I like that they still have the ice skating out there. Still makes it feel like winter, even though the weather sometimes does not.
You know, it's still winter. I mean, it's February in Fenton. There are a couple people out there ice skating tonight. Looks like fun. It's really comfortable weather to be out on an ice skating rink tonight. But tomorrow, maybe not the best day for the ice rink. 63 is our forecast high in Raleigh, 66 in Fayetteville, 62 in Rocky Mount. It's even going to be 65 in Wilmington. So if you do want to make outdoor plans, tomorrow looks like a great day to do so. Keep in mind we will see an increase in cloud cover tomorrow. While the 60s sound good to many people watching right now, let's talk about our winter temperatures. Let's check in on our winter so far. And remember, as meteorologists, we define meteorological winter as December, January, and February. So our average temperature this winter running 4 degrees above normal, making it the 5th warmest winter to date on record. And for rainfall, of course, it's been a very wet winter. We expect this in an El Nino year. 3rd wettest winter to date on record, running 4.5 inches above normal in terms of rainfall. But temperatures are certainly warming, and we've seen this trend in our winter months for the past 50 years. When you look at the seasonal warming in North Carolina, winter is the season that is warming the fastest. We're seeing the greatest jump in temperatures during the winter months, and of course that often also means less snow. So when we look at our longest snow droughts at RDU, I want to update you. We are now in 3rd place. It has been 733 days since we last saw measurable snow here in the Triangle, and that snow drought likely to continue even longer. We don't have any snow in the forecast or even any rain in the forecast for the next 7 days. Cooler than normal temperatures look to return toward the end of the month, but for now you're going to have to, head west if you want to see the snow. Quite a bit of it there at App Ski Mountain, all of our ski resorts in the North Carolina and Virginia mountains. Still some snow on the ground if you want to head that way this weekend. We are going to cool down this weekend as this front drops in from the north tomorrow. It'll knock our highs down into the mid-50s, near or slightly above normal for early February. We're back down to 30 by Sunday morning, but look at this. No rain chances for the next 7 days. As we get toward the end of next week, high temperatures could be back up near 60.
Beautiful weekend. Wow. All right. Thanks, Kat.
Big events translate into big dollars for our local economy. A closer look at just how much games and shows at PNC Arena are pumping into our community.
PNC Arena is expected to generate big money, more than $3 billion in economic impact for Wake County over the next 5 years.
Those new numbers were shared with the group that owns PNC Arena. They come from a new economic impact study that shows 1.6 million people attended a Carolina Hurricanes game, NC State basketball game, concert, or other event in the 2022-2023 season. In that same time, the arena generated more than $590 million for the county. PNC set to undergo a $300 million renovation next year.
Yeah, a lot of work going on over there. RDU Airport is among the many organizations in our area honoring the black men and women who shaped the community that we live in.
Captain Warren Wheeler was a pioneer in the aviation industry. He founded Wheeler Airlines, the first African-American owned and operated airline. It launched right from RDU. Before that, Wheeler was the first African-American pilot for Piedmont Airlines at just 22 years old. In 2022, he was inducted into the North Carolina Aviation Museum Hall of Fame. He went to Hillside High in Durham and attended North Carolina A&T University.
He has an amazing story.
Yep. Two Johnston County siblings are celebrating the surprise of a lifetime.
So Robbie and Samantha's babies were born the same day. Baby girls Elena and Riley were born on December 17th, less than 15 hours apart. Riley was born at 12:40 a.m. and Elena at 2:59 p.m. The families even got placed in recovery rooms right across the hall from each other at Wake Med North. Congrats to the Sweet families and their new additions, and those pictures are just too cute.
That is so sweet.
Got them all wrapped up in their little Valentines.
Oh, so cute. And that really helps a lot of family, I'm sure, just being able to bounce from one side of the hospital to the other, right?
Exactly. And now everybody knows what, they're both going through the same stuff with newborns at home.
Kidding.
Not the easiest. Thanks for joining us here tonight on WRAL News.
Our next newscast is at 10 on Fox 50 and 11 on WRAL. Have a great night.
Keep watching WRAL News over the air Channel 34 and Spectrum Channel 1257.